When a late-night traffic stop spirals into a shocking act of rage, Officer Ryan Cole finds himself at the mercy of a man he thought he could break. General Samuel Reed, a war hero with secrets of his own. As the video of his actions goes viral, Ryan fears his career is over. But instead of revenge, Reed offers him an unexpected path to redemption. Become a mentor to troubled youth in the city's toughest neighborhood, a world far from the police precinct. Reluctantly drawn into Reed's challenge, Ryan faces defiance, distrust, and painful reminders of his past. As he bonds with Darius, a street-smart teen with scars as deep as his own, Ryan's hardened beliefs begin to unravel. Yet hidden beneath their growing connection is a family secret that links him to Reed in ways he never imagined. In this emotional journey of accountability and transformation, Ryan must confront the darkest corners of his own heart to break a cycle that has haunted generations. With every step, he edges closer to forgiveness, and an unexpected twist that binds two broken souls on a path toward hope and second chances. A single act of rage, a silent choice for forgiveness, a path toward redemption that neither man saw coming. Officer Ryan Cole is a seasoned cop, hardened by years on the force and haunted by personal demons he refuses to face. But when a routine traffic stop spirals into an incident of racial humiliation, ending with him setting a black man's car ablaze, he believes it's just another power play in a world that's spiraled out of his control. He has no idea that the man he's degraded and discarded is none other than General Samuel Reed, a decorated war hero recently returned from a mission shrouded in secrecy. But instead of exposing the officer or seeking revenge, General Reed offers a challenge that Ryan can't ignore. The two men meet, and Reed gives him an unexpected choice: redemption rather than ruin. Reed's terms are simple. Ryan must commit to a mentorship program for struggling youth, an initiative close to the general's heart and far removed from the officer's world. Thrown into a corner of the city he's only known through sirens and handcuffs, Ryan begins a journey of reluctant introspection, forming connections he never thought possible. What unfolds is a deeply emotional and transformative story as Ryan confronts not only the pain he's inflicted on others, but also the wounds he's been carrying for years, wounds that may be tied to the very man who now seeks to change him. And as Ryan and Reed's lives become intertwined, a buried family secret is revealed, one that links them in unexpected ways and brings both men to the brink of a shared reckoning. In Ashes of Redemption, forgiveness is the hardest road, but it may be the only way out of a cycle that has haunted generations. With every page, readers are drawn into an unforgettable journey of pain, resilience, and hope, culminating in a twist that binds two broken souls and challenges everything we think we know about justice, compassion, and the power of second chances. Officer Ryan Cole's physical description: early 30s, tall and muscular, with a rugged face showing signs of aging. His short brown hair and piercing blue eyes give him a stern, intense presence. His even posture reflects years of hardened discipline. Raised by his father, a former police officer, Ryan grew up idolizing the police, but has struggled with anger issues since his father's death in the line of duty. Disillusioned by years of urban policing and haunted by his own trauma, he has become cynical, often letting prejudice guide his actions. General Samuel Reed's physical description: early 50s, thin but strong, with graying hair and a neatly trimmed beard. His calm, steady gaze and dignified bearing are softened by his gentle, unassuming presence. He dresses in simple civilian clothes, blending into crowds despite his air of command. A famous war hero, Reed came from humble beginnings, raised by a single mother in a low-income neighborhood. Driven by a need to give back, he started a mentoring program for troubled youth, seeing himself in them. His recent return from an undercover assignment only reinforced his commitment to changing lives beyond the battlefield. Darius D. Moore, a lanky 16-year-old with expressive eyes that sparkle with equal parts curiosity and defiance. He wears his hair in a short bun and has a few small scars, evidence of a rough upbringing on the streets. Darius has bounced between foster homes and has a reputation for petty crime, often used as a scapegoat by his older peers. Intelligent but hardened, he is initially suspicious of adults, especially the police. He becomes one of Ryan's minds, and over time, Their connection reveals hidden sides to both. Metro City Police Precinct. Description: a sterile, institutional building with cold, harsh lighting and gray walls, bustling with officers and the hum of police radios. The precinct's environment is tense and unforgiving, mirroring the city's mounting distrust of the police force. The center, Reed's youth mentorship program. Description: a small, worn-down building in the heart of an underfunded neighborhood. Its colorful graffiti-covered exterior a sign of resilience amidst decay. Inside, the walls are decorated with motivational posters and photos of successful alumni. It's a place of struggle but also hope, offering kids an escape from the streets. Downtown Metro neighborhood. Description: the rough part of town, where boarded-up storefronts and graffiti-splashed walls line the streets. Despite the decay, the neighborhood has a strong sense of community, with corner stores, makeshift basketball courts, and people gathering outside on stoops. Ryan's apartment. Description: a small, sparsely furnished apartment with worn-out furnishings and a lingering smell of stale coffee. Personal items are few. A photo of his father, some old medals, and stacks of police paperwork, reflecting Ryan's loneliness and lack of personal fulfillment. General Reed's home. Description: modest but welcoming, with mementos from Reed's military service tastefully displayed among family photos and community awards. Its cozy, lived-in feel mirrors Reed's humility and commitment to simplicity despite his accomplishments. Ryan's police station, where whispers circulate as officers huddle around a phone screen. Ryan's incident is now public, and the video of him setting the car on fire is going viral. Ryan looks back at his actions from the night before and feels a mix of shame and defensiveness. He realizes his job and reputation are in serious jeopardy. The confrontation with Chief Alvarez, the chief's office, tense with barely contained anger. Chief Alvarez, furious but concerned for the department's image, confronts Ryan. She tells him that the man in the video is General Samuel Reed. Ryan is stunned and horrified by the revelation. Chief Alvarez demands an apology and immediate public accountability, but Ryan struggles with what this means for his future. Reed silences General Reed's home, where he receives a call from a military officer. Reed is advised to press charges, but he refuses, stating that he has other plans for the officer. Reed's silence builds suspense and sets the stage for his alternative form of justice that will change Ryan's life. An unexpected offer. Reed's request for a meeting. The police station, where Reed unexpectedly shows up, requesting a private meeting with Ryan. Reed's calm presence unsettles Ryan, who fears an immediate confrontation or public accusation. Reed offers him a deal: avoid court and scandal if Ryan participates in his mentoring program. Ryan, desperate and out of options, agrees. The first visit to the center. The center, a worn-out but hopeful youth program in the city's toughest neighborhood. Ryan arrives at the center and feels out of place. He meets Darius and other young minds, whose distrust of him is palpable. Ryan's first interaction with the kids is tense and awkward, reinforcing his prejudices. However, he senses that Reed's challenge is not something he can walk away from. Resistance. Ryan's struggle with mentoring. The center, where Ryan begins his first session with the kids. Ryan tries to assert authority, but the kids challenge him, especially Darius, who calls out his insincerity. Ryan's frustration grows, and he realizes he can't win over these kids easily. Darius' confrontational nature triggers memories of his own adolescence. A tense exchange with Reed. Reed's office at the center, after the mentoring session. Reed reminds Ryan that real change takes time, forcing him to confront his own assumptions and biases. Cause and effect. Ryan resents Reed's advice, but feels compelled to stay, realizing he is losing control of his life without this arrangement. The center, during a basketball game. Ryan tries to connect with Darius through sports, and they begin to find common ground. For the first time, Darius lets his guard down, hinting at his dreams and struggles. Ryan is surprised by his empathy and feels a sense of duty to Darius. Ryan's visit to Reed's past. A neighborhood nearby where Reed grew up, which Ryan explores after a conversation with the general. Ryan learns about Reed's difficult past, seeing the parallels with his own upbringing. Ryan begins to understand Reed's resilience and dedication, which plants seeds of respect and introspection in him. Unraveling. Ryan's breaking point. Ryan's apartment, where he struggles with growing anger and confusion. Ryan's self-doubt and guilt are growing. His defensiveness turns to self-criticism as he realizes he is losing control of his identity. In a moment of vulnerability, he decides to open up about his own struggles to Darius and the other kids. Trusting Darius. The center, during an informal session. Ryan shares pieces of his past, revealing the challenges of growing up with a father who had a strict view of justice. The children, especially Darius, begin to see Ryan differently, leading to a stronger bond between them. A secret unearthed. A visit to Ryan's father's grave. A peaceful cemetery, where Ryan visits his father's grave to reflect. Ryan reflects on his father's influence and remembers a story that foreshadows his connection to Reed. A memory surfaces involving his father's past mistake that eerily parallels his own, leaving him distraught. Confronting Reed. The center, in Reed's office. Ryan confronts Reed, suspecting that Reed knows more about his past than he lets on. Reed confirms that he knew Ryan's father, revealing a history of a similar altercation that ended in tragedy. The shock forces Ryan to reconsider his actions and seek genuine redemption. The path to forgiveness. Ryan's apology. The center, in front of the youth. Ryan publicly apologizes to the children, acknowledging his mistakes and vowing to be better. His vulnerability breaks down barriers with the children, and they begin to trust him fully, marking a turning point in his relationship with them. Reed's challenge. The center, after Ryan's apology. Reed assigns Ryan a long-term project to help raise funds and expand the program. Cause and effect. Ryan sees this as a chance to make a lasting impact, immersing himself in the work with a newfound purpose. Healing the Divide. Community event. A neighborhood block party hosted by the center. Ryan is fully immersed in the community, interacting with children and parents. He feels a sense of belonging for the first time and does his work by helping the community and himself heal. Closing with Reed. Reed's office. In a final conversation, Ryan and Reed reflect on the journey they've been on, with Reed finally expressing his forgiveness. Ryan feels the weight of his guilt lift, marking the beginning of a renewed life. Reed hints at future challenges, inviting Ryan to continue his work with the center. A new beginning, the future of Ryan the center, as Ryan prepares for a new mentoring session. Ryan has officially joined the center as a permanent mentor, committed to helping the next generation. His journey from anger to acceptance is complete, symbolizing the full circle of his transformation. Reed's legacy continues, a quiet moment at the center's wall of past mentors. Purpose. Reed observes the positive changes in Ryan, proud that his own struggles have paved a path for others. Reed's work in the community continues, inspiring more lives, as Ryan is ready to take up the mantle, embodying the values of compassion and redemption. The streets lay quiet under the orange haze of streetlights, shadows lengthening over cracked sidewalks and shuttered storefronts. Ryan Cole gripped the wheel of his squad car, his jaw tight as he scanned the empty road ahead. The city felt different at night, its usual chaos reduced to murmurs and distant sirens. An uneasy calm stretched thin over the streets he knew too well. He was on his third shift that week, and fatigue had settled heavily over him, sharpening the edges of his frustration. He'd been a cop for nearly a decade, but recently, his job felt like a long series of meaningless incidents. Sometimes, he caught himself wondering if anything he did actually made a difference. He drove on, his mind teetering between anger and exhaustion, haunted by memories of cases he couldn't solve and mistakes he couldn't undo. Up ahead, a pair of taillights blinked in the darkness, the car moving at an unnaturally slow pace. Ryan's fingers twitched over the steering wheel. Something about that car, creeping along in the deserted neighborhood, felt wrong. He flipped on his lights and sirens, signaling the vehicle to pull over. Ryan stepped out of his car, his boots crunching on the gritty pavement. The stopped car, a modest black sedan, idled quietly under the harsh blue and red flashes of his squad car lights. He approached the driver's window cautiously, shining his flashlight into the car's interior. Inside sat a black man, middle-aged, with a calm, steady expression. He met Ryan's gaze through the glass without flinching. Ryan was used to seeing fear, irritation, or compliance, but this man's unflinching gaze felt off. "License and registration," Ryan said, keeping his voice flat. The man handed over his documents with a quiet efficiency. "Is there a problem, officer?" His voice was deep, controlled, without a hint of hostility. Ryan inspected the man's license. Samuel Reed. The name didn't ring any bells, but the man's demeanor unsettled him. There was no nervousness, no pleading, just calm observation, as if Reed was the one in control. "You were driving well below the speed limit," Ryan said, the words sounding hollow even to himself. "Any reason for that?" "Just taking my time," Reed replied evenly. "It's late. Didn't think anyone would mind." Ryan's grip on the flashlight tightened. Something about the man's calmness, the lack of submission in his voice, irritated him. He decided to push a little. "Mind stepping out of the vehicle, Mr. Reed?" Reed's brow creased slightly, but he complied, stepping out into the cool night air, his hands visible and relaxed. Ryan gave him a quick pat down, finding nothing unusual. The man stood silently, his posture steady, his eyes never wavering. That calm gaze dug under Ryan's skin, turning his frustration into something sharper. "Why are you out here at this hour, Reed?" Ryan asked, unable to hide the edge in his tone. Reed glanced at him with a look of mild curiosity. "I could ask you the same, officer. Just trying to get home, same as anyone else." The response hit Ryan the wrong way, feeling too much like a challenge. In his fatigued state, his anger began to slip past his usual restraint. He glanced at the back seat of the car and saw a briefcase lying there. "Mind if I check your car?" Reed hesitated, a flicker of frustration crossing his face, but he nodded. "Go ahead." Ryan rummaged through the car, opening the glove compartment, running his flashlight over the seats. He found a wallet tucked into the center console. Inside was a military ID. He glanced at it, reading the name again. Samuel Reed. Rank: General. A slow suspicion crept over him. Military IDs could be faked, and his experiences on the force had left him wary of assumptions. "General. Huh?" Ryan said with a trace of mockery, holding up the ID. "You look pretty humble for a military hotshot." Reed's expression remained composed. "Some of us don't wear it on our sleeves." Ryan's irritation flared. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. "Listen, you may think you're something, but you're just another guy in the wrong place at the wrong time." Reed didn't respond, his silence amplifying Ryan's anger until it spilled over. He tossed the ID back into the car and took a step back, gesturing dismissively. "Get out of here." But as Reed moved back toward his car, Ryan's rage ignited into something darker. Without thinking, he grabbed a can of fuel from the squad car, pouring it over the front of Reed's sedan. Reed stopped, turning to watch, his expression unreadable. Ryan struck a match, dropping it onto the car. Flames roared to life, licking up the hood, the windshield turning black as smoke filled the air. Ryan stared, horrified at his own actions yet unable to look away. Reed stood in silence, his face illuminated by the fire's glow. There was no fear in his eyes, only a quiet, measured gaze that seemed to pierce through Ryan's bravado. "Good night, Officer Cole," he said softly, turning and walking away into the darkness. The fire crackled and spit, filling the night air with acrid smoke. Ryan watched the flames consume the car, his initial surge of adrenaline fading into an unsettling numbness. He had crossed a line he couldn't step back over, no matter how badly he wanted to. For a few long minutes, he stood frozen, the heat from the flames warming his skin as a hollow sense of dread settled in his gut. He could still see Reed's calm, unblinking gaze, unshaken even as his car burned. It was a look Ryan couldn't shake, one that stripped away the layers he'd built around himself and left him feeling exposed, vulnerable. Finally, he tore his eyes from the burning wreck and stumbled back to his squad car. His hands trembled as he gripped the wheel, the full weight of what he'd done crashing down on him. He had taken his frustration and anger and transformed it into something monstrous, something he couldn't justify or excuse. He sat there for a moment, his chest heaving with shallow breaths, wondering what the repercussions would be. He had a sinking feeling that Reed's silence was more dangerous than any outburst could have been. Reed hadn't argued, hadn't threatened. He'd simply watched, and then he'd left. The drive back to the precinct was a blur, his mind reeling with shame and unease. He parked and sat there, staring at the police station's cold, gray exterior, unable to gather the will to step out. The precinct had always been a place of authority, a fortress against the disorder outside. But tonight, it felt like an interrogation room, every shadow casting suspicion back on him. Ryan finally forced himself out of the car and into the building, his every step heavy with the weight of his actions. As he entered, he noticed a group of officers huddled around a phone, murmuring with subdued intensity. One of them looked up and caught Ryan's eye, his expression darkening. A sick feeling twisted in Ryan's gut. He had been so focused on Reed that he hadn't considered the possibility of surveillance. What if someone had seen the incident? What if there was footage? He forced himself down the hallway to his desk, trying to ignore the suspicious glances cast his way. His mind raced, heart pounding with fear and regret as he considered the fallout of his actions. And then, from a distance, he heard a murmur. "Did you see that video?" Ryan's blood ran cold. He knew in that instant that his life had irrevocably changed, that whatever happened next, the world would see what he'd done. He braced himself, realizing that the nightmare was only beginning, and that the calm gaze of General Samuel Reed would haunt him far beyond the night's events. Ryan entered the precinct, his steps heavy, the chill from the night air clinging to his skin. He could feel the stares before he even looked up. Officers clustered in small groups, whispering and casting glances his way. It wasn't unusual for rumors to spread, but this felt different, more urgent, almost fearful. As he moved closer to his desk, he saw it. A group of officers hunched over a phone screen, their faces lit by the glow of the video playing. Ryan caught a glimpse, a flash of his own face, the fire dancing in his eyes as he watched Reed's car burn. His stomach turned to lead. One of the officers, a younger recruit named Hale, looked up and met his gaze. There was something in Hale's eyes, shock, maybe even disgust. Ryan's pulse quickened, the reality of his actions from the night before crashing down on him. The video had gone viral. A mixture of shame and defensiveness rose within him. He told himself it wasn't as bad as it looked. He'd only meant to intimidate the man, to put him in his place. But deep down, he knew there was no justification for what he'd done. He tried to ignore the whispers, pushing his way down the hall toward the chief's office. He knew he'd have to face this head-on, whatever it took. Chief Alvarez's office was dimly lit, casting sharp shadows on her face as she leaned forward, her expression as unreadable as ever. She gestured for him to close the door, and Ryan felt a chill run through him. "Sit down, Cole," she said, her tone cold and controlled. Ryan obeyed, sinking into the chair opposite her. He braced himself, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Alvarez studied him for a moment, then tossed a tablet onto the desk, the screen displaying a still frame from the video. "Care to explain this?" He swallowed, his throat dry. "Chief, it got out of hand. He was..." She cut him off with a sharp glare. "That man you humiliated and assaulted? He's General Samuel Reed." The words hit him like a slap. He opened his mouth to protest, but nothing came out. General? He'd tormented a decorated war hero without even knowing. "Do you have any idea of the kind of damage you've done?" Alvarez's voice rose, controlled fury breaking through her usual restraint. "This isn't some low-profile case. This is a decorated general, Cole. The media is going to eat you alive. You think this department can afford to cover for you?" He struggled to find words, his mind reeling. I didn't know who he was. Does that make it any better?" she snapped, cutting him off. "I can't keep this quiet. You need to issue an apology, and there will be consequences. Your badge is on the line." Ryan's gut twisted. Losing his badge was unthinkable. His entire life, everything he'd worked for, hung in the balance. He tried to steady his voice. "Chief, I'll do whatever it takes. I need a chance to make this right." Alvarez leaned back, her gaze hard. Let's hope General Reed is feeling generous. He's not pressing charges for now, but don't count on his silence lasting forever. Across town, General Samuel Reed sat in his modest living room, surrounded by mementos of a lifetime of service. His phone buzzed insistently on the table. He'd been fielding calls all morning, fellow officers, military contacts, even a few friends urging him to press charges. His gaze drifted to the photo of his mother on the wall, her face calm and serene, a reminder of the values she'd instilled in him. After a moment's hesitation, he picked up the phone. It was Major Langston, an old friend from his days overseas. "Sam, you can't just let this go," Langston said, his voice tight with indignation. "That officer humiliated you. He crossed every line. We both know this isn't something to just brush under the rug." Reed took a steady breath. "Believe me, I know what he did, but I'm not interested in ruining his life." Langston paused. "Then what are you going to do?" Reed looked out the window, where the city stretched before him, gritty and defiant. "I have my own plans. This officer will face his reckoning, but not in a courtroom." He hung up, the silence settling around him like a blanket. Ryan Cole's life would change, but not by Reed's hands in the way the world expected. He had something more profound in mind. The following morning, Ryan sat at his desk, tense and restless, wondering how the day could possibly get worse. Then the call came. "Cole," said Chief Alvarez's voice over the intercom. "Get down to the lobby. Now." He didn't need to be told twice. As he made his way down, he ran through a dozen scenarios, each one worse than the last. Maybe the media had shown up, or worse, the general himself. The last thing he expected, however, was to see Reed standing there, calm as ever, waiting for him. Ryan's throat tightened. "General Reed," he managed, his voice barely more than a whisper. Reed's gaze was level, almost curious. "I think we need to talk, Officer Cole." Alvarez motioned them into a nearby conference room, shutting the door behind them. Reed stood across from Ryan, his posture relaxed, but his eyes held an intensity that unnerved him. "General," Ryan started, fumbling for the right words, I didn't know who you were." "If I had—" Reed raised a hand, silencing him. "This isn't about who I am. It's about who you are, Officer Cole." Ryan felt the sting of the words, his own defensiveness wavering under Reed's calm scrutiny. He couldn't bring himself to meet the man's gaze, the shame of the night's events looming over him. Reed's voice softened, though it remained firm. "I'm not here to press charges, Cole. But there are conditions." Ryan's head shot up, a glimmer of hope mixing with apprehension. "What conditions?" Reed took a slow breath. "There's a youth mentorship program I run. It's for kids in rough neighborhoods, kids who've been in trouble, who've lost their way. They need guidance, discipline. Something I think you could offer." Ryan blinked, caught off guard. "You want me to work with these kids?" "Yes," Reed replied simply. "For a month, at least. Consider it an alternative to court." The room fell silent, the weight of Reed's offer settling over him. Ryan's mind raced with reasons to say no, but he felt cornered, his options limited. And a small part of him, a voice he barely recognized, knew that he couldn't walk away from this without facing himself. After a long moment, he nodded. "I'll do it." The center was a small, weathered building on the edge of town, its walls decorated with bright graffiti and worn posters of past youth events. Ryan arrived with a mixture of reluctance and resentment. This wasn't his world, and the worn-down look of the place only heightened his discomfort. Inside, the hall buzzed with energy, laughter, arguments, and the clatter of chairs being moved around. Reed appeared beside him, calm and composed, as if the chaos was simply part of the rhythm of the place. "Welcome to the center," Reed said, gesturing toward a room where a group of teens sat in a circle, each one wearing a guarded expression. Ryan took a steadying breath, feeling out of place among the tough, skeptical faces. His gaze lingered on one boy in particular, a lanky teen with defiant eyes who stared at him with open suspicion. Reed introduced him. "Darius, meet Officer Cole. He'll be working with us for a while." Darius folded his arms, his gaze narrowing. "Why's he here?" Cops don't exactly have the best track record around here. Ryan felt the challenge in the boy's words, his own frustration bubbling up. But he forced himself to stay calm, knowing that this was the moment he'd have to start breaking down the walls he'd built. "It's a long story," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "But I'm here to learn, just like you." Darius scoffed, and the other kids muttered amongst themselves. Reed placed a reassuring hand on Ryan's shoulder, guiding him to a seat within the circle.